What's up, y'all? Welcome to part 4 of the mini-series that we've titled The Miracle from Motown, The Rise, Fall, and Salvation of Smokey Robinson. We're anxious to get into this episode. We hope y'all are too. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into it. About 2 months later, after Claudette had come back home early from the tour, a guy came over to her and Smokey's apartment because by that time they'd moved into their own place. The guy was there to show them slides of baby carriages. Both Smokey and Claudette were happy as they looked at the slides. At the end of the slideshow that the man presented, the last slide had a guarantee on it, and it was very ominous. The guarantee said, in case of a miscarriage, your money will be refunded. Smokey he never thought that could happen to them. Didn't even cross his mind that such thing was a possibility. That seemed like it was just a formality for very rare cases. Unfortunately, though, it was almost like the slide was prophetic, because 2 weeks later, her water broke. By the time she got to the hospital, it was already too late. The baby was gone. Needless to say, they were both devastated. Smokey tried to console Claudette by saying, "It's okay, baby, as long as we have each other." But just like in other situations where something very traumatic has happened, no words of sentiment could make the pain that they both felt go away quickly or easily. To make matters worse, in the aftermath of the miscarriage, Smokey's relationship with Diana, who was still known as Diane at the time, became an issue. Smokey was working hard to try to make the Supremes a success. When it came to Diana, he could hear a sexiness and a unique quality in her voice that not everybody else did. Having said that, Diana was getting frustrated because Smokey had hits with both the Miracles and with Mary Wells, but he didn't have any with the Supremes. Smokey asked her to be patient, just hang in there. They kept rehearsing together, and they worked a lot of late hours. Eventually, Claudette confronted him about it. "The word due is that you're really enjoying Diane's company," she said. "What that mean?" he said. "You tell me," she responded. "Oh, that's my friend," he told her. Claudette told him that people say it's more than that. What did Smokey say? People say stuff all the time, always talking noise. They love to gossip about different things. Claudette wasn't backing off. It's getting back to me, though. I know you say people say things, but guess what? When people say things, people also hear things, and I'm hearing things. Then Smokey now is on defense. "Hey, listen, if it's upsetting you," she told him it's upsetting her a lot. Then he comes back, "Would it make you feel better if I didn't see her so much?" "It would," she tells him. "Then I'll cool it." That's what Smokey told his wife in regards to his contact with Diana Ross. And he did cool it, or at least that's what he told Claudette. The truth about this situation wouldn't come out until decades later, but we'll save that for later on. Right now, Smokey and Claudette were happy because Claudette had gotten pregnant again. Happiness didn't last very long, though, because sadly, her water broke during her 5th month, just like it happened during the first pregnancy, and she miscarried for the 2nd time. In 1964, wow, when it rains, it pours. Claudette had another miscarriage. She and Smokey, the first two, of course, were awful, terrible situations to go through, but she and Smokey were especially disappointed this time. The doctor suggested that Claudette stay off the road and that their chances of having the baby would increase if she did that. They did everything right. They did everything that the doctor suggested. Despite all that, end result was the same. Then Claudette suffered yet another miscarriage. But then right after that, she was pregnant again. This time, things looked very promising. Claudette felt strong. They were hyped up by a lot of positive reports that they were getting from the doctor visits. The doctor kept telling them there was nothing to worry about. They assured Smokey and Claudette that they were well on their way to having their first baby. So they believed that, even though they had a little bit of trepidation because it had already failed so many times. They still wanted to believe the best of the situation. Claudette made it to her 6th month, and they were more confident than ever that this was the time that was going to happen. During that time, Smokey went to New Jersey to perform. After the show, His niece Sylvia told him that Claudette had prematurely given birth to twin girls. Twins? The doctor had never said anything about them having twins. As he called home, he immediately headed to the airport and flew back to Detroit. Meanwhile, he was telling himself how twins would more than make up for all the miscarriages they'd been through. But it was simply not meant to be. When Smokey got to the hospital, he got the worst news possible. Both of the twins had passed, and their tiny respiratory systems had collapsed. At this point, devastating, disappointed, all the different words none of those things even combined can tell you how they felt at this point. They were beyond that. Because of this situation and all the ones they had faced before, despite his heartache, Smokey was inspired to write the song More Love. It reminded him of Claudette, and he hoped the words to the song would help to heal her broken heart. While all this was going on, a chance meeting in an airport would change Smokey's life. At that time, Smokey was 27 years old. When he reflected on his life later, he acknowledged that he was vulnerable. In fact, he admitted that he was always vulnerable to women. What does that mean? Uh-oh. He didn't know whether it was frustration over the numerous miscarriages, or whether it was because he'd been with Claudette for 14 years, of more than half his life. He would find himself moved by what was about to happen. One day, after he landed at the Detroit airport, a man approached Smokey. "Hey man, my daughter's a fan of yours. She'd very much like to meet you, man," the man said. Smokey agreed to meet her. Her name was Candy. When Smokey saw her, he thought she looked like she just stepped out of Vogue. Smokey liked her flashing eyes. He liked her caramel-colored skin. She had a bright smile and a super shapely figure. Oh yeah, she had a beautiful personality too. "Nice to have met you," Smokey told her. Then she said something that would have sent chills up my spine. "You can't escape my spell. I'm a witch." Smokey later said that it was a joke. All I know is if a girl told me she was a witch, I'm a believer. Anyway, Smokey's response was, "I'm an angel, and angels can escape witches whenever they want." That was it, as far as any exchange or communication between them for the time being. A little while later, Smokey was at a show. He looked over in the wings, and when he looked, he saw Candy. She had on high heels and a tight dress, and she definitely had Smokey's attention now. When he got a chance to talk to her, she told him that she was working as a model at the auto show. Then she told him that her full-time job was as a Playboy bunny. Oh, he was hooked when he heard that. He had to get her phone number. And he did. The first time they got together, Smokey brought a friend with him because Candy lived with a friend of hers. They got together and kind of hung out, had some laughs, but nothing physical happened between them at the time. More time passes. This time Smokey's at a show in Cleveland. He looks over in the wings, and yet again, Candy's over there. He was really interested in her now. When he got to talk to her this time, he found himself telling her that no matter what, he loved Claudette. He wasn't going to leave her. He said that, but at the same time, he wanted Candy as bad as he'd ever wanted any woman. Smokey found himself attracted to every part of this woman. She had character, she had class, she was a wonderful listener, a sympathetic soul, she was witty and candid, she was easy to be with, she had perfect diction and superb enunciation. In other words, he had a long list of things that made it easy for him to do what he wanted to do. Let's be honest, we can go back a few lines to where we talked about the high heels and the Playboy bunny and the body, and that was enough right there. All this other stuff here about these, yeah, please. That's just excuses to make it seem like it was just something he couldn't resist. We'll leave that right there, though. Again, this is his story. I'm just relaying it to the people. Smokey and Candy eventually did get together, physically. Afterwards, Smokey basked in how he thought it was such a beautiful thing. Then Candy said this to him: "I just want you to be happy." Okay, for you dudes out there that maybe listen to this, check this out. If a girl is telling you all these things and she's following you all these different places and she's trying that hard to throw the coochie at you, let it miss you. Run as hard as you can away from that because it's not going to turn out good for you. I don't care what rationale you can give yourself, like Smokey was doing with all this other stuff. Don't do it. You are going to regret it. Trust me, you're going to regret it. I'm just letting you know. Back to the story. Smokey had put himself in a precarious situation. Look at that. It's already happening. I just warned you in your own life, dudes. You're going to regret it. This dude's already in a precarious situation and it just happened. Let's keep going. He wasn't sure what to do or how to handle it. He decided to open up to his father and get his expert opinion on the subject. Oh, Lord. What did Five have to say about the scenario? Smokey asked him this question. Do you think a man could be happy with more than one woman? Okay, this is what Five said. Okay, so now let's set the scene first. Five is talking to him. He's sipping on some VO. He kind of gets his mindset together before he launches into his response to Smokey's question. This is how he starts out. I don't look at it that way, boy. Go back to the raw times, before all the rules and regulations. In the raw times, the natural thing was for a man to have as many women as he wanted and could afford. The Lord made more women than men. Now, you don't expect that he wanted those extra women's to go without a man. I think he meant for the men to be shared by them women. Oh, Five was on a roll now. He had more commentary on the subject. Look at nature. You see 25 heifers and one bull. Look at horses. For every 30 miles, you'll see one stallion. For every rooster, you see 24 hens. He had more to say. He kept on talking, mostly about how women had played with men's minds and made men think that they truly only want to be with one woman. Five called that line of thinking civilization. This is what he had to say about that. This civilization business is here to stay, boy. But I don't think it's natural. Then he concluded it with this. Men are always going to act like they acted in raw times. Most times, one woman per man don't seem to be enough. All right, so basically what he's saying here is that in the olden days, guys can do whatever they wanted to. As long as they could afford it, they could have as many women as they wanted to. The Lord created all these women, but there were more women than men. So men had to double down, triple down, however many you could get on your roster to make up so that some of these women wouldn't be alone. That was raw times. Civilization is men have been tricked by women with their mind games into thinking that men should only want to be with one woman. That's what he said. Now, as crazy as Five's commentary and philosophy sounded, it had a strong influence on Smokey. For the most part, he agreed lockstep with what Five believed. Smokey thought because of his love and respect for women, he could maintain relationship with more than one of them. He even fantasized about having his own house of the United Nations. He thought about having children with women of every race, every color, with all of them living in one house with peace, harmony, and happiness. Oh my God. What? Smokey doesn't admit to using any heavy drugs at this time in his life, but he must have been on some powerful ish to think that something like this was actually possible. After his talk with Five, Smokey came to a decision. He wanted to protect Claudette in his mind, and the best way to do that was to keep his side chick out of Claudette's face. Around the same time, Claudette had a man that she wanted the two of them to meet that would change both of their lives forever. This man was a doctor. He specialized in helping women with problem pregnancies, and he had unusual theories and methods, but Claudette wanted to meet with him anyway. When they met the doctor, he revealed that the problems with Claudette's pregnancies was because of the shape of her uterus. He suggested that only a radical approach could solve her problem, and then he laid out a plan that he called implantation, which was an experimental method that worked like this. Smokey would get Claudette pregnant, the doctor would surgically remove the fertilized egg from Claudette, and he would place it in another woman's womb that served as a surrogate and would carry the child for the full term of the pregnancy. The doctor admitted that there had only been a few experiments using this procedure. He himself had never attempted it. If they agreed, this would be his first time ever doing it. He was upfront with them, and he told them that their chances of success were not good. But having been through what they both had already been through, they were still intrigued. They also had a concern. What if the woman changed her mind after the baby was born and wanted to keep the baby? The doctor told them that they would have to find the right woman, and he also took that responsibility on himself, saying that he would find that right woman. While it was risky, they were both on board with what he wanted to try, but there were still two other things that needed to be dealt with. First, the doctor told them that the entire procedure had to be on the low. He told them, listen, the laws don't recognize what I'm doing right now. If they find out I'm doing these type of procedures, I might lose my license. They were okay with that. The other thing is that after the baby was born, they'd have to adopt it, since it would officially be born to another person and not to them. Another concern was, what would Smokey and Claudette tell people after the baby was born? Honestly, they got a lot further than a lot of people would have with this person, because it sounded like some mad scientist stuff. It sounds like this dude's a kook. He's already telling you that the authorities are not okay with what he's doing, and if it was found out, he's going to lose his license, and I'm assuming he probably would have gotten some jail time. But when you're desperate, you're willing to do or try almost anything, and this is where both of them were. And so it was that they both agreed to try it. Accordingly, Claudette got pregnant again. A few months later, the doctor called, telling them that he'd found somebody that was willing to carry the baby for them. All she wanted in return is that they pay for her college tuition. Yeah, they had the money. That wasn't a big deal. Sure, they agreed to that. As the doctor had told them earlier, the egg was taken from Claudette and implanted into the surrogate. Time went by. Surrogate made it safely to the second trimester of pregnancy. At that point, the doctor advised Smokey and Claudette to start telling people that they had applied for adoption. That way, when the baby was born, they'd already have their cover story in place. Now let's go back a couple of minutes to when the doctor told them to keep it on the low. Don't tell anybody about this. Y'all already know when you tell somebody not to tell something, they always feel like there's at least one person I got to tell. I trust them. I can tell them. And this story is no different. Despite the doctor's warning not to tell anyone about the procedure, they each agreed to tell one close friend the whole truth about what was happening. Of course, Berry Gordy was the person that Smokey chose to tell. So things went along smoothly, considering the situation, and despite all the strangeness and the cloak and dagger and the hiding and not revealing and revealing secretly to one person and all that, things were progressing the way they were supposed to in relation to the pregnancy. On August 16, 1968, Smokey and Claudette got the phone call they'd been waiting for from the doctor. He told them that the surrogate had given birth to a healthy baby boy. After seeing the baby, the Robinsons both hoped that people would not notice that the quote-unquote adopted boy looked a lot like Smokey. Legally, they adopted the baby the day after he was born. They named him Barry William Barope Robinson. That's a mouthful. Let's break his name down. The first name, Barry, of course, after Berry Gordy. William, after Smokey himself. Barope, after all the male members of the Miracles. They used the first two letters from each member's first name. B-O from Bobby, R-O from Ronnie, and P-E for Pete. After baby Barry was born, Smokey had to share his joy. He took the boy so Candy could see him. Oh my goodness. He's taking his newborn baby to see the side piece. Candy played with the baby, kissing his hands, playing with his cheeks. Y'all know how women do when they get to see a baby. They just, yeah. All those things is what she did with this baby. Then her eyes filled up with tears. She told Smokey she was about to leave. She was leaving Detroit. Smokey was shocked. What? Why? She told him that now that he and Claudette had everything they wanted, she didn't want to be no distraction. She didn't want to do anything to destroy it. She felt like it was in both of their best interests for her to just leave the situation. She told him she was a distraction, that she loved him too much, and that she had too much respect for Claudette to potentially damage their life together. Not only was she leaving, she told him, she was going on the other side of the country, all the way to San Francisco. They already had a spot for her in the Playboy Club there, so it was all arranged. Smokey didn't want her to go, but what could he offer her if she didn't, if she stayed there? He cared about her, but he wasn't committed to her. His commitment was reserved for Claudette and baby Barry. Both he and Candy knew there was no future for them together. About a week later, though, Candy was still on his mind. And despite it probably not being the best thing he should do, he decided to go to Five for more advice. Let's see what Five come through with this time. Smokey started out with this. People say a man can't be in love with two women at the same time. What do you think? He asked his father. Now let's interject here that Five was familiar with who Candy was. He knew that Smokey wasn't just speaking abstractly. He was speaking in particular about Candy. So Five knew who she was. In fact, Candy even called Five Daddy. His advice to Smokey, and this was good advice this time, not that rambling, whatever that was. Let her go, boy, Five said. He told Smokey, just let the girl go. We're going to stop right there for part 4. Please continue to like, share, subscribe, comment, and repeat. Be sure and come back for part 5 as well. Thank you and see you soon.